Hey Stampers, Kim from stampingandperfection.com. I'm happy you joined me today. I'm going to create a scrapbook page, and I'm going to basically case a page I made a while ago. And instead, the last page I made was with Alta new stamps, but this time I'm going to use some of the stamps from Catherine Pooler's new Stamp of Approval set, Tropically Yours. I just love this. Look at all the stuff in this collection. Fantastic sentiments that are screaming to be put in a scrapbook page. That gorgeous background stamp, and you can see there are coordinating dies with each of these stamp sets. I made a card with that background stamp yesterday. It's just beautiful, but the sentiments just, I don't know, I love them. Then there's a nice floral. There's a beautiful one with just leaves. Then the flamingos, and then the stamp set with the borderettes. I just love borderette stamps. I have a bunch of them. Nothing like this. These are very unique, but you can do a lot of things with borderette stamps. So I'm really excited about this. And one of the reasons I love this page, I took a class at Alta New Academy with Lilith Eccles, I think her last name is, stamping in your scrapbooks or scrapping with stamps or something like that. But we're going to make our own background papers, and I've pulled out my 12 by 12 Misty, and the first page I'm going to make is with leaves. And this stamp set, you can see the different background pages here that I've made. This stamp set is called Leave Me in Paradise. So I'm going to select a bunch of leaves, and that is an 8.5 by 11 piece of Nina Solar White, and I'm just placing these stamps in the upper left hand corner. I can fit a whole 12 by 12 inch piece of cardstock here and get the whole thing in and still have a little room to hang my stamps off, but I want to make some smaller background papers. So I'm using many of the stamps. I'm leaving like 3 small ones not used, but you notice I've tucked that paper all the way in the corner. Now the hard part is to decide which one of Catherine Pooler's green inks do I want to use for my leaves, because I pulled out a few of her greens, not all of them. It's really a hard decision, but I'm going to settle on this eucalyptus color. I kind of like that it's a medium green, but it's still bright. I just really love it. Still feels bright and happy to me. So I'm tucking that white cardstock all the way in the corner, inking up my stamps, and then I'm going to ink them a second time. And notice I tuck that back into the corner to make sure it's in that corner. Because I'm using a lot of stamps, I'm not getting a perfect impression the first time. So each time I do this, I'm going to stamp each one twice, which is one of the beautiful things about using the Misty. Ordinarily, when I use Catherine Pooler inks, I don't need to do this if I'm using it just with a clear block. And even with my smaller Misty, I don't have to do this. But now this Misty, and notice I turned it 180 degrees. Now I'm going to see if I can get away with leaving those leaves where I have them on my Misty, but you can see this just isn't going to work. At some point I've got to decide that, okay, I'm going to flip this over. Maybe it'll work this way. No, that's exactly the same thing. I'm actually going to need to move those stamps. So I'm going to clean them off with my chamois, with my stamp chamois, and then I'm going to move them. And I make one little mistake here. No. I don't clean them off well enough is what I do. I should have stamped them onto a piece of scrap paper, because in a minute you'll see right there I've got a little bit of green smudge. It won't matter because I'm going to stamp right over it, tucking it into the corner. There you can see there's lots of ink transferred there, but it isn't going to matter. So I'm inking that up. And this if you're just a card maker, like if your paper crafting is limited to card making, you're not really a scrapbooker. This big 12 by 12 Misty is not something that you need. if you are a scrapbooker, this is a wonderful, wonderful splurge, because I like to do a lot of background things on 12 by 12 papers, and it's beautiful. I can do this with 12 by 12 papers. They're squares, so I can just turn them 90 degrees and get all four corners to look exactly alike. Now, with a paper that's not square, that's rectangular like this, I am going to ad lib a little. Now, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to make sure I get all the ink off with a piece of copy paper. And now I'm going to fill in that center. And this just is, huge to me, being able to like stamp all of these at one time and then to re-stamp them to make sure I get a nice, crisp, beautiful image is just the beauty of the MISTI or the stamp, and whatever stamp positioner you have. But this 12 by 12, love, love, love. I actually got it on sale, and it was a good sale. I don't remember where I got it, but I actually might have purchased it directly from MISTI, the MISTI company. And I have not been sorry that I bought this. Again, you'll see a little bit of green smudge at some point here, but it doesn't matter. I'm stamping right over it. And notice that my leaves go off the edges. If you want to make it look like a real piece of pattern paper, having it go off the edges actually really is a helpful thing. And isn't that green pretty? That green ink is so pretty. So now I have one little spot I need to fill in, so I'm just going to keep one of my stamps out. And I mean, I've really used this stamp set here. Like, I only left a couple of those stamps unused. Again, the smudge didn't matter. So that page is all done. So now you're going to see me pull out the I'm cleaning everything off. And that's one thing I've learned. I have to really clean off my space before I move on to the next thing, because I hate it when I get ink on my hands or ink on my craft mat or my MISTI, and I accidentally transfer it to the next part of my project. It's irksome. So now I'm using two of the floral images from the Tropically Yours stamp set, which is part of the Tropically Yours stamp of approval set. And at first I decided I'm going to use my MISTI. Now you just saw me flash that beautiful Fiesta blue, and this is the point where I realized this would be what I want to do here. Will be much easier if I just put these two stamps on a block. And this is a Catherine Pooler block. I love her clear blocks. First of all, putting that grid on there is brilliant. Second, it's a nice thick block. It's got curved edges. They're not sharp edges. And there's a little indent in the center. I love these blocks. They're my favorite clear blocks. And I have several of every size, but many of the round ones. She's got a little round one that's perfect. You'll see me pull that out in a little while. So if you're super fussy, I'm just eyeballing these, and because I'm keeping them on the clear block this way, I'm actually always lining them up exactly the same. And I'm actually doing a pretty good job here eyeballing it. But if you are super fussy, get out your T-square ruler and a pencil and lightly mark those lines, or use some temporary adhesive on the back of that cardstock and make sure that cardstock is anchored in place on your MISTI, and use that matte or grid paper, depending on what you have in your MISTI. Now I'm taking just one stamp, and I'm going to fill in the edges because I want these images to go over the edges. That's what makes it look like an actual page of pattern paper. But this is going to be pattern paper that nobody else has. So I'm using the one stamp set to go around the right side and the bottom, and then I'm going to pull the other one off. And notice I'm careful about cleaning the ink I just smudged all over. I'm not always careful doing that, so I'm learning. So I'm trying to find the correct orientation that I used before, lining it back up on my block so that I have the same orientation of that particular stamp. And these inks just are beautiful. Look how perfectly they stamp. I haven't had to stamp any of those twice. Those foam pads are just fantastic. You get beautifully stamped images with Catherine Pooler inks, and that ink blends just beautifully. So now I'm looking to see what I want to make my third one out of, and I actually want to use a sentiment for my third one. And the Good Vibes border set has a Good Vibes stamp, and I love that sentiment. It's perfect for this picture that I want to use, because every time I look at that picture, I feel good vibes because that's what the day felt like. I'm just using a scrap paper. This is Tiki Torch. It's an orange color, and I'm deciding I'm going to flip this over in a minute because I want it to go the long way. And I'm just going to stamp this a bunch of times. Again, if you are fussy, then you're going to draw some light pencil lines on there, or you are going to really carefully use those grid paper lines. I'm more of less of a perfectionist and more of I really want to get this done. You can see I'm not even stamping all the S's perfectly because I'm not applying enough pressure to that right hand end of that block. And I'm just going to go down, and you're going to see when I pull this paper up, it's not perfect. There's one spot that's got a little bit too much space. It won't matter on my final page. It won't make any difference. So I'm finished that. I'm going to clean up. There we go. And I just use I don't use any special stamp cleaner or anything like that. I just use water on my stamp chamois and then a dry cloth, and that's that. So now I'm pulling out my 12 by 12 white cardstock, and I want to do a little background technique with some I'm picking 3 different colors. I'm using Shea Butter, Lime Ricky. I'm going to pull out another green because I love the greens, but then no, I definitely want to use a different color. That Coral Cabana. And that Coral Cabana is new for me. I just got that, but I really like this color combination. I'm smushing those from my ink pad directly onto my craft mat. You could do this if you don't have a craft mat. You could do this on a clear block. You could do exactly the same thing on a clear block. I'm pulling it out the package that the stamp set came in. I never throw those away for this reason. I just spritzed it with some water from my distress sprayer, and I'm deciding that, oops, it's getting a little too muddy because that green and Coral Cabana mixed a little bit too much. I want a little bit more yellow and a little bit more of the Coral Cabana. So I cleaned off my craft mat and added some more of those colors. And I want this really messy look. This is my background. I like this because it doesn't add too much water to your cardstock. So it's okay to do this technique on a page like this. I'm going to cut this one down to 6 by 6. This is a nice Fiskars trimmer. And this one I'm going to cut to 4 by 8.5. And I'm sort of layering them together to see if I like this. And the scrapbook layout I'm using, I'm not going to cut that smaller one at all. Again, that's about a 4 by 5 piece of scrap paper there, or maybe even 4 1/4 by 5.5. But I'm just fussing with them to see how I like them. And this layout is inspired by Lilith's class that I took. I really like the way she just randomly layered things together. And then I'm putting my picture on. I'm kind of, making sure nothing is lining up perfectly. I just want to see edges on those papers. And I'm taking out my craft stapler, and I'm going to just staple them sort of in place, not perfectly. I can still move them around a little bit and straighten them out if I need to. And, I like the way this is looking, so I'm going to use my Altenew permanent adhesive. I love this adhesive because it also behaves as a temporary adhesive when I need it to. I'm going to stick that down. I've got plenty of that background showing through. I love that brighter green and the yellow and that pretty coral cabana showing through. Same permanent adhesive on the back of my picture. And now I'm going to put some of my stuff away because now I want to make some flowers and leaves that I can die cut with the coordinating die cuts for these sets. So I'm going to cut a piece of white cardstock, just a couple inches wide. I just want 3 flowers and, 5 or 6 leaves. And I'm pulling out the coordinating die sets, and I'm picking 2 leaves that I used in my background and then one that I haven't used yet. So I've used the majority of that Leave Me in Paradise stamp set. So I'm using that same eucalyptus on the ones from the background. Now I'm using the Lime Ricky on the smaller leaf that I didn't use, and I really like the Lime Ricky. Look how bright that is. Like, I want more of that. So I pull out a round block, again another Catherine Pooler block. I love the round ones, are my favorite. And now I'm pulling out a floral image with the Fiesta Blue, stamping a couple of those, and I'm taking one of the little center pieces and I'm pulling in that coral cabana, and that's going to be my center. Then I decide, I need a little more of that pretty coral cabana, so I'm taking the other flower image, stamping one of those, and using that same center in the Fiesta Blue. Now this is my Alta New little mini die cut. It was like $49 at altanew.com, and I am going to just notice that the dies come, the Thinlit dies come hooked together. You actually need a pair of wire cutters, and they need to be super thin wire cutters to fit in between those, and you need to snip those apart. And those little edges get sharp, so you want to be really careful. And you don't want any of those falling onto your craft room floor because you don't want to step on them. That can be very dangerous. Not just painful, but dangerous. I'm going to use some washi tape to tape these down. And I love this little die cutting machine for this specific purpose. It cuts just the embellishments like this. That's like 2 inches wide, and it's perfect. I have a whole die cutting area in my craft room. Like, I have my craft room set up in areas, and it's on the other side of the room. It's not that far away, but this is so convenient. And look how beautifully those die cut out like that. Those die cuts line up so well with the stamped images. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the flowers. Snip them apart. Once they're snipped apart, I only have to do this the first time I use them. And then usually I put a piece of magnet sheet in there to hold all of those dies so I don't lose them and so that they don't slide around. And I'm snipping off little pieces and putting them directly into my garbage can and making sure they fall way down in the garbage can. Now I'm noticing there's a little extra something going on there with that die, and I'm not sure why. Did I pull out the wrong one? So I'm looking this over. Like, that's why I'm doing that. I'm not sure why that's like that. I'm going to cut it out and I'll figure it out. I'll just snip that off. And I'm going to cut out the rest of these. I'm going to die cut the rest of these with the coordinating dies. And I believe this is where I figure out, like, what the heck's going on here? Why is there a little something? These are tropical flowers. So at this moment, I realize that there's actually a centerpiece that actually makes it look like a tropical flower. But I'm not using that because this picture is from Michigan, and Michigan is not tropical in August. So I just want it to look like a pretty flower. So I'll just cut that off when it's time to use it, that little white piece. And then I'm going to just finish my die cutting, clean up my space, and then I can put my page together. So now I've got my pieces cut out. Here's where I trim off the little excess. And I'm just using these little paper snips from, these are Tonic or Tim Holtz paper snips. I really like these. They have a little tooth to them, so it's kind of nice. They don't slip. And gazing at that, the sentiments there, trying to decide. So now I'm just going to fuss with my leaves and flowers and just put them sort of around. So I try to sort of make a triangle of sorts with my die cuts when I lay them out. That was one of the things that Lilith had recommended. Sort of triangles work well, and it is very pleasing to the eye. Now I'm using that 3M foam tape, which I love. I got a huge roll for like $32 from an electrical supply company, and this stuff lasts forever, and it holds your pieces in place. It gives your cards dimension, and I really like that 3M foam tape. And I'm going to put it on most of the die cuts. A couple of them, like one of the next leaves I put down here, I'll put just some of my Altenew adhesive down. I just want some dimension, not too much dimension though, because I do store my scrapbooks on a shelf, and if you lay them sideways and one is on top of the other, if you have too much dimension, it can actually crinkle the pages that are on top of the one with all the dimensions. So I try to be, a little careful with the dimension. So I'm picking out a couple sentiments. I'm going to pull out, here's the beauty of this 12 by 12. Like, this was a huge splurge. I did get it on sale, but it was a huge splurge. But like, I love this gigantic Misty for scrapbooking because I really like dark sentiments. And I'm going to ink these up like 3 times here. Probably should have done it a 4th time, or maybe I should have even heat embossed it. I definitely will be re-inking my black stamp pad here. And I'm using my Altenew permanent black ink pad. My Catherine Pooler black is super juicy, so I use it for other techniques until it's, I've used up some of the ink in it. But this Altenew I use for everything, and it's probably, running out of ink a little here on me, because I don't usually have to stamp it that many times. But so far I'm liking the page. I'm looking at the page deciding, what does this page still need? I know I need to add, I want to add some sparkle. Like, there's nothing like sequins. So I picked the Studio Katia Sparkling Sea Confetti, and these are nice confetti. They don't have the hole in the center, so I kind of really like these. And I love that there's different shades of blue, like a little bit of dark blue. Just a couple of those dark blue sequins really goes a long way. I love that there are some sparkly ones and some clear ones, and that there's that lighter shade of blue that sort of coordinates with those flowers that I used in the background for my background paper and for my embellishments. So I fussed with these for a while. I tried to just drop them on to get an organic look, but too many landed in one place. But I'm just going to now pull out my We Are Memory Keepers. I'm not sure whether this is called a jewelry picker or what it's called. I can't remember. To be honest, I use this thing all the time. I should remember what it's called. My memory is failing me. But I love this thing. It's got clay on one end, and then it's got a tool that you can pull out that's got a pointy end, and I like that pointy end a lot. But I pick it up with the clay, and now I'm using that Ranger Multimedia Matte. I really love this glue. I've put a special precision tip on the end of it because it allows me to get a tiny drop of glue. I don't need a lot of glue. And what I like about this is I'm super messy with glue. I love liquid glue. It's my favorite glue to use. And this stuff dries clear. Like if it smooshes out below my confetti or my sequins, it's going to dry clear and it's not shiny, so you don't even notice it. So I still feel like my page needs something, and I'm deciding that I want to add some like splatters. So I pull out my big round brush and I squish on some little, that's my Catherine Pooler ink. It's really juicy. It's super juicy. Add a little water and then I just tap it with my finger and it's giving me some splatters. And there's a fine line with splatters where you have just enough splatters and then one flick too many and you've got way too much splatter. So I'm trying not to overdo it. It's very subtle, but I do always like the way that really adds a nice touch. And you could add many different colors. Still feeling like it needs something. So I realize I have not written in my handwriting. I love when people put their own handwriting on a page. I think that you should always have some of your own handwriting. If you read my blog or watch any of my videos for scrapbooks, you know I feel like preserving your handwriting is a huge memory. So names, dates, I have to look up how to spell Mackinac or Mackinac Island, and I decide in the process this needs some lines, and I am not using a ruler. I'm just drawing them on. They're imperfect. I love that look. It's artsy. That's my story and I'm sticking to it, but I like the way that looks. A lot of times I'll put 2 lines on. So now I've completed my page. I'm just going to add the name of the island, and that's going to complete my page. So thank you for watching. Please give this video a like and share with your friends, and stop by my blog at stampingimperfection.com. And feel free to give some of these techniques a try. Make your own background papers, make your own die cut embellishments. Use your stamps to add some embellishments to your scrapbook pages.